Andy Murray, what is Tony Khan's one big mistake?
Airing the footage from the all-in backstage fight between CM Punk and Jack Perry. This was always going to be contentious. It was always going to make half people think it was genius and half people think it was stupid. I was willing to give the decision a chance. I think early on, we spoke about it on video and stuff. And in the aftermath, like, I was cautious, but I wasn't like, okay, this is going to be terrible. And in the aftermath, the way they brought Jack Perry back for a few weeks, for a few months maybe even, Jack Perry was over as a heel for a bit there. And it felt like, okay, maybe this accomplished the goal. Maybe you wanted to use this as a vehicle to get Jack Perry over, all this stuff. But looking at it longer term, now that we're a year, 2 years or whatever, removed from all of this stuff, what benefit has this brought to AEW? The answer is nothing. If anything, it has diminished the company. Number one, it makes them look really petty and silly and weird. And like, I know CM Punk has indulged in a fair bit of that behavior himself, but it increasingly just feels like a way to go, look, he's the bad man there, bad man there. Number two, Jack Perry, he's not even on TV at the moment. His overness as a heel quickly evaporated. He quickly became a one-note act who does a stupid messiah pose when he loses matches and drives a bus. That's his character. That's the character. He smiles, he drives a bus, and he does a messiah pose when he loses. There's nothing else there. His work hasn't improved. He's less over today than he was back then now. And what ushered in the worst era of the Young Bucks ever with these stupid secession EVP characters that they're still doing after returning at Dynasty. And also, business-wise, look at every single KPI for this company. Where have they gone since they aired the footage? It's a pretty easy answer. In 2024, yes, ratings have kind of stabilized a bit, but they're not what they used to be. At the end of the day, this was just, it was a colossal error of judgment from everyone involved. And it made, on a PR level as well, which isn't always quantifiable, it just made them look like the smallest time, pettiest goofs in the universe. There's another argument to be made about certain events that happened before this, and it's like a whole chain reaction that'll come later in this video. But yeah, man, why did they air the footage? Name one tangible long-term benefit audience. I bet you can't do it.
So AEW has been one of the best things ever to happen in wrestling over the last 5 years. It's helped the sport and the industry in general. I wouldn't want it to go away. You see those crazy accounts, I want it to die tomorrow. It's like, first you get a real problem. That can't really be your biggest concern in your life. But having that competition has just made things so much more fun. I think back to Bryan Danielson, Adam Cole debuting back-to-back, which was crazy. Or Ricky Saints recently as well, doing his thing. And all the other people that have gone back. Cody Rhodes, right? One of the best returns I think I've ever seen. And I felt genuinely, awful word to use, but I felt privileged to be there live because I was just like, man, this is the coolest thing ever. But I think probably a mistake that did happen relatively early on was having the 3 shows. So 2 hours on a Wednesday, 1 hour on a Friday, then 2 hours on a Saturday with Collision. And it was 2 hours for Rampage for a while. It was just too much content. And all of a sudden it kind of, and this would happen with not just wrestling, with any show that you have on television, it just starts watering things down because people could watch Dynamite beforehand and know that they were getting 100% of the AEW content. Then all of a sudden there's a Friday show, there's a Saturday show, and you start to feel like you're falling behind. And when you start to feel like you're falling behind, you can't keep up with the narratives. Then you may go, I'll skip Dynamite or I'll watch the clips on social media because I don't really understand what's going on. And look, anybody would have said yes because it's more money in the pockets. And at that point, AEW was a company trying to cement themselves for however long they are going to be around. But from a consumer point of view, especially because you had so much WWE content, and if you wanted to be a super nerd wrestling fan, so much accessibility to other wrestling content from across the globe, that it just did. The only term to use it again is it just watered things down. And it's kind of like a chicken and egg scenario. Well, that's not the right term to use, but you don't not do it. But at the same time, it did have a negative, nothing sort of too serious, but just everything that I've already said. It would have been so much better if either Rampage had stayed and we had moved it around, or at least tried to build it back up, because it did come a bit of a B show. But then to add Collision and then tell people, oh no, this is now our sort of secondary show to Dynamite, and then Rampage becoming a 1 hour on a Friday. And let's not forget that Rampage had the debut of CM Punk, which is one of the best ratings I presume that AEW ever did. So I mean, it was the same with WWE when they introduced SmackDown, but they have a far better balance now. They've made it work, and I'm sure that AEW will do that too. In fact, I would say it's been better for most of 2025 as I stare off and stumble over my words. But it did hurt at the time. And I don't think that you would have done it in hindsight from a non-financial point of view. I only say that, who are we making excuses for? It's not an excuse, I just want to make sure they get both points across so I know what the comments are going to do. But yeah, essentially I got to watch all of it because I'm very blessed to do this as a job, but it just made it a little bit harder when you didn't want that. And when Dynamite first came along, it was just like this fun, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. So that's what I would have done, but maybe that's the reason I don't run a wrestling promotion. Maybe one day I will.
One Tony Khan mistake you'd erase from history.
One Tony Khan mistake. Well, that's tough. I made some notes on potential mistakes that Tony Khan made. And oh God, Jesus, where do I start here?
That's unbelievable.
If I have to, narrow it down to just one, it would be losing the ability to say no, because it kind of catches a lot of things in one here. Because there was a time period when he did say no and didn't say everything's great, right? We take you back, end of 2019, bit of a shambles, that classic episode of AEW Dynamite that everyone talks about, and immediately after that he was like, right, I'm in charge now, here's what we're going to do, and it launches AEW into a sensational 2020 where they just, dominate NXT, they dominate the conversation, they put on amazing matches, amazing pay-per-views. Nowadays, 2025, it feels like he just can't say no to anything. Should we have a new belt? Sounds great. Should we have another TV show? Great, let's do it. Like, everything Jon Moxley and Chris Jericho pitch. Great, lads. Say no. Say stop doing what you're doing. Like, I get it. They clearly have a, long-term strategy for, the Death Riders, whether you like that or not. Not for me, obviously. But some stuff you just how has this got to this stage? How has this made it onto television? How have they got a match on pay-per-view when so many other big names or potentially big names, your powerhouse Hobbs, all those people that we always talk about as being overlooked, don't get this because Tony Khan just can't say no to people. Ditto, can I have a match on the pay-per-view when the pay-per-view's already got 10 matches on there? Just say no. Say no. Say no, we're going to... I know they do what they do with pay-per-views. That's never going to change. They're going to be 4 or 5 hours and we're going to have a constant argument with people who, yes, want their money's worth. And we just think, the atmosphere would be better if it was a tighter show or whatever. Yeah, he can't say no. And he should get back to being able to say it because he's in charge at the end of the day. And when he does say no, that is when AEW produces their best stuff.
So right away, it's important just to say this. Tony Khan has done a lot of good for wrestling, just making AEW a thing, being such an important part of the creation of AEW and leading AEW, being the president of AEW, all this stuff. That's great. It's been good for wrestling. It's led to so many incredible moments that some of my favorite moments in wrestling ever have come from AEW. So they're awesome things straight away. But there's also been a few mistakes along the way, and a big one that I think Tony Khan made, I don't know when it really started coming into effect, but maybe the last couple of years, whatever it is just doing too many pay-per-views. I know I'm a wrestling fan sat here saying there's too much wrestling. Well, woe with me. So many bigger problems going on in the world than watching too much wrestling. But for me, I feel like it's had a detrimental effect on the actual product itself and my experience of watching the product, because back when AEW used to have just 4 pay-per-views, 4 big special pay-per-view events, and then you had your TV specials sprinkled in there and then just your weekly TV, those pay-per-views felt like must-see. It felt like the culmination of so many stories, the big climax moments were always at these pay-per-views pretty much, and you felt like you just had to tune in. You had to stop what you were doing. You were like, my big event, my big Hangman Adam Page crowning moment, my big CM Punk MJF final match, they're all going to happen at these big shows. I need to tune in. I need to watch them. And it didn't matter how big they were, because you felt like you were saving up in a way for these big shows. You were like, I will sit and watch a 5-hour pay-per-view because I'm doing it 4 times a year and I'm getting great wrestling. I'm willing to invest that time. It's great. I'm up for that. Now that we're at a point where we're on, I don't know, is it 10 or 12? It feels like there's loads of pay-per-views now compared to what they used to be, is double, triple even. And they've just lost a bit of that specialness, if that's a word, specialness. They've lost a bit of it because it now just feels like we're in that WWE cycle where it's there's going to be one a month, and They're quite chunky, each one of them, and they've been normalized a little bit. They don't feel like these special things where it's like, I need to tune in to see what happens. It feels more like a TV special that I'm paying for now. Like you kind of get big moments within storylines, but those storylines keep going on and on and on and on. They're just little checkpoint moments rather than like, whoa, a big crescendo, that's the pay-per-view, then we'll have a reset after the pay-per-view and go again for another couple of months, build some anticipation, then we get another big peak. They're not like that anymore. It's just like little bumps. Like I'm going to make this really clear again, like, the wrestling's great. The pay-per-views are always pretty good. Like, you rarely sit in an AEW pay-per-view and go, that sucked from start to finish. Like, it just doesn't happen. But they just don't have that feeling anymore where you've had that anticipation, that big payoff. Like, the anticipation in wrestling is arguably just as important as the payoff itself. It just is. Like, I like sitting there and getting excited about something, watching a storyline develop over months and months and months and months, and know it's going to lead to this big moment on a big stage. Now it's like, there's a rivalry, and then it has one little checkpoint at one pay-per-view, then we keep going, another little checkpoint, another pay-per-view, and some people love that. Like, that's been like the WWE system for years and years and years, like for big rivalries. Like, that has happened in the past, but I think for me, I got a bit jaded by that. They've started to do it maybe a little bit less in WWE. Like, I feel like those pay-per-view spots, because they're a bit smaller, their pay-per-views, like apart from WrestleMania, that's like a double one, but their pay-per-views generally are about 3 hours long, so the spaces are more of a premium, so you don't tend to have a lot of like rematches and like continuations of feuds, really. Like, pay-per-view to pay-per-view is what kind of we did in the past, where it was like you had like a 3 series or a 4 series of matches, pay-per-view after pay-per-view, and it was a bit like, okay, another one. And AEW didn't really have that problem for a long time because the pay-per-views were so spread out. It's like you had a different kind of matchup and they felt fresh and exciting. You could really remember each one of them specifically because they felt so different. I feel like we're losing that a little bit. I get it. All in, stuff like that. You need a big stadium. Get that one in there. Forbidden Doors kind of lost a bit of its like selling point because a lot of the big players that were in New Japan now have come over to AEW or are just not in New Japan. It just doesn't feel as special again anymore. Wrestle Dream's a nice idea, but again, like Dynasty, they're just there. AEW should never feel like it's just there. It should feel special. And I get why Tony's done it, like, because it's more money, and then that's going to be great for Warner Brothers, great for AEW. I understand that, but I think it's had a bad, like a negative effect on the product itself. I'm less excited about the pay-per-views, so I'd say that was a mistake. I'd go back to having 5 or 6 at a max, okay? Make them feel special and just stop overdoing it. Just have TV specials. They worked. They were fine. I'm happy with that. Keep My Winter Is Coming. Keep Spring Break or whatever the hell it's called. All that kind of stuff. And we'll just do that going forward. Undo that mistake. Erase it.
I've sort of reached saturation point, yes, even me, with criticism of Tony Khan's biggest mistakes, because you see it so often if you're in our bubble and our space, like the AEW were dragged over the coals for terrible booking decisions, and that's because for a few years there weren't actually that many. There were the rule-proving exceptions when there was kind of a stinker of an angle or a segment in AEW. So I've gone down a bit of a pettier route. I've just gone back to my memories of not liking the idea of a match and then being proved right in person, and I certainly wasn't alone in this. Plenty of our Mr. Bean-looking ass just thought it at the time. And it was booking Kenny Omega specifically in that 6-man tag at All In 2023. AEW may never get an opportunity to work a show, run a show in front of a crowd that big ever again. The 80,000 plus, or 80,000 plus paid, 70,000 in Wembley for All In 2023. An amazing, like, incredible history-making event with no hyperbole there. And there were elements of that card that totally worked. There was the main event between MJF and Adam Cole that, while divisive, was just incredibly over in the building on the night. And, the quarter hours bore out that there was certainly a lot of investment in that story at the time. Punk and Joe knocked out a 3.5 in the opening. There was some highlights to be found, but a lot of the card, much in the same way as happened with WrestleMania 41, felt like big show compromises. Not Paul White, he was on the pre-show, but like the idea of the sort of the impetus being to get wrestlers on the card rather than in matches that truly mattered and that were befitting of the stage. And there was none more obvious and apparent than the Kenny Omega, Hangman Page and Kota Ibushi versus the Bing Bang Gang 6-man tag. Or trios match, sorry. I suppose the pushback to that be, well, it's inoffensive. Well, it offended me that Kenny Omega was coming out as part of a trio. It offended me that, Hangman Page, the character that I have been informed for 6 years now is the main character. And look, even I'm starting to buy that he's probably the tree. But so what's the main character doing in a 6-man? Like, what's the main character doing as part of a trio, as part of like a very mid-card story in a very mid-card match that had some very mid spots? It didn't feel right in the build. And a lot of fans, again at the time, were just told to shut up because we were supposed to be going to this great show and we were getting all selfish because we're limey, Mr. Bean looking ass Brits. But then on the night, I think we were all proved right, all 80,000 of us, as we responded to some of the cool spots and we let off some of the ill-timed ones. But did it leave any impression really, other than on like Dave Meltzer, who went very high on it and loved it? Did it matter ultimately long-term in the stories? Not really. And we will never get a 70, 80,000 attended AEW show, maybe ever again. So we certainly won't get the opportunity for a Kenny Omega in particular, or a main character Hangman Page, to have that night, that moment, that scale of thing take place in the way it could have done in All In 2023. There are little individual moments of bad television, bad pay-per-views, bad booking, whatever, but that one will stick out to me as the kind of ultimate wasted opportunity from a sheer selfish point of view of getting to see a man who you could very believably call the greatest of all time not get the biggest possible bouquet of flowers.
For me, I would absolutely erase Tony Khan ever getting physical. Of course, Tony said at various points in time that he would never get physical, and then he did, and it was awful. Yet again, this was something where the roots could be traced back to CM Punk, to AEW's lack of basic management skills, and to the ridiculous decision to air that footage on your television. As part of the decision to show CM Punk mildly choking out Jack Perry, that led to the AEW return of Jack Perry as the scapegoat, which in turn led to the Young Bucks asking Tony to reinstate Jack. And so, yes, we had that faux apology from Jack Perry where he winked at the camera and then he hit Tony Khan in the gut with a microphone. And it was laughable, man. It was the bump Tony took. The fact that he paused before then going like, oh yeah, I need to grab my ribs. Sell the ribs, brother. The awkward movements he had on the mat. It was just bad, man. It was just really bad all around. And that's before Tony then took the Tony Khan driver from the Young Bucks, which also looked just so goofy. Speaking of goofy as well, let's not forget Tony turning up at the NFL draft in a neck brace, which, to be fair, on the surface, I think that is fantastic. After all, sell the injury. This is a guy, a non-wrestler, taking these moves. He's going to be really messed up. His neck's all broken. And yeah, the problem is, yes, Tony Khan wore a neck brace, but he didn't exactly sell his neck. Instead, he was constantly smiling, constantly laughing. His head was on a swivel, which kind of negates any sort of selling of the neck, and any damage to that neck. All of this just made Tony Khan like a laughing stock. You had NFL analysts, they were mocking him, not to mention supposedly the reactions of people in both the AEW and WWE locker rooms as just who could not believe the stupidity of all of this. Plus, showing the All-In footage was partly done to show that CM Punk angrily confronted Tony Khan, which in part led to CM Punk's firing. Yeah, here's Jack Perry and the Young Bucks assaulting Tony Khan on TV, but still keeping their jobs, like the EVPs now have more power than, the actual owner. This whole story with the Elite it sucked the life out of AEW, much like the Death Riders, and so much of it traces back to the night that Tony Khan got physical for the first time. And it was one of the most like, hey, look at this, it's all fake moments in modern wrestling history. Just please never do that again, Tony.
Well, I was tempted. I was unsure, rather, as to how far I was going to go with this. Because realistically, his biggest mistake was allowing the events of Brawl Out to A, happen in the first place, and B, linger unresolved with this really naive head in the sand idea of splitting the rosters and making everyone happy. It was an untenable situation that he almost ran away from, thinking everything was going to be okay. You could make the argument, which I'm going to attempt to do now, that literally signing CM Punk in the first place was a mistake. And I know that sounds absolutely ridiculous because CM Punk is responsible for some of the most immortal moments in AEW history, and at this point, by extension, pro wrestling history. Certainly in the weeks ahead of the actual debut, the expert viral marketing campaign, that 99% certainty, but that 1% of doubt was totally magic. Not a single person, there's actually one, but not. Certainly it wasn't me thinking, this could go wrong, he's got a reputation. I was just completely enamored with the idea, fixated on watching Rampage on that Friday. Okay, so it is a hard one to argue. But when you look back at it
in retrospect, there is a sense that, and it's ironic, I understand like Tony Khan gets a lot of criticism, and he must think sometimes, can I do anything right? There's always going to be a criticism. It is the most scrutinized, over-scrutinized company in pro wrestling history. Because the one time he does something expertly that a lot of people, in my opinion, rightly believe he doesn't do enough of, and that is actual effective promotion. One of the biggest promotional masterstrokes ever was the marketing behind the CM Punk debut. It was almost too effective in that AEW was almost framed as this pro wrestling utopia that got everything so right, the scale, the creative freedom, the success of the first 1 or 2 years. It felt like everything had to be perfect, this fragile ecosystem to summon the great, elusive, mythical firebrand Philip Brooks into it. It's like we finally created something perfect. It was almost as if on that night it was all for him. Like they'd carefully curated this perfect pro wrestling utopia promotion, so good that even CM Punk would want to walk in. So he drastically changes the complexion, indeed the entire purpose of what AEW is. So when it goes drastically wrong, and obviously it does, it feels like, well, that's just something we can never recover from. And we sit here, Wilborn asking me the question, me answering it, Andy Murray with the cameras, recording in April 2025. Brawl Out happened in September 2022, and that is really the catalyst for the feeling being lost, right? It is April 2025, and for reasons I don't agree with, narratively, AEW, for whatever reason, is still exploring the idea that the company was fundamentally broken in 2022. Does that happen if such a massive deal out of the great mythical CM Punk is made? I'm not entirely sure. Realistically, it's Brawl Out, but you could, and I'm trying to make the argument that maybe signing him in the first place, or at least making the biggest deal imaginable. What if he got like injured 4 months in? You know, like it was just, I think the promotion was almost too effective. And the problem with CM Punk is that even before the AEW run, like, I mean, we got so much money out of it, realistically, of putting him in thumbnails at every rumor of him returning. He's just such this shadow looming over everything that maybe all along they were asking for trouble by putting all of their trust in CM Punk. And the events of Brawl Out and the stories, like the little minor subplots, the sound bites, the promo that he cut, I don't think any booker ever in their prime, right? Like Watts, Baba, Ghetto, you know, none of them could craft a pro wrestling storyline as interesting, fascinating, as obviously real as CM Punk's exit from AEW and everything that led into it. AEW will never be able to tell a fictional story more engaging than the real one. That was the thing that damned them ultimately. So after all that hype and all of the brilliance across Eddie Kingston, MJF, you know, I kind of just wish it never happened.